Good, good. Okay, everybody got coffee. Also, you online, maybe you got some coffee or a tea or something. We have half an hour that me and Patrick thought we could use for some discussions. One of the part is actually wrapping up a little bit from Vince's speech and what he has on his mind about the internet and the future and other issues about that, and also wrap a little bit up the day, the issues we've been talking about and the questions you might have, or other contributions you want to give to the discussion. And for a little bit of housekeeping, we have 4:30. We have drinks and some nibbles and stuff just around the corner here, around the corner here in the lounge.
So let's open the floor. Anyone that would like to talk about some bringbacks from the discussions that we had in the... Yes, of course. Our new member. You know, all of you can become members in ISOC or SE or by talking to Niklas. He has an iSettle, so you can just pay. Done. Yeah. You can also send the money to me.
Or you can talk
and then
to
I
me.
might talk to Niklas.
I think most of you guys are actually members. But anyway, that's a good point.
So I'm a member in both.
Yeah.
But anyway, the question mark was raised, or should I say, the presentation was on that centralized view a little bit from our dear friend of the United States. I challenge that because of a couple of reasons. We have had this discussion, or should I say a discussion in the break also. We have a problem with the robustness when it's coming to centralized systems. You have an easy target. There's a lot of other question marks. The overhead to bring the everything centrally is there. There's a lot of other things which is negative seen from a user point of view. The round-trip delays, we can have a long discussion on those. We can have a long discussion on a number of other things. And the interesting thing is that everyone talks about scale and gain of scale. Now, we have a limited number of clock cycles on an execution platform. The interesting thing, everyone thinks that we are raising that clock cycle amount when we're doing virtualization. And that's a scary thought, because I've talked to operators in the United States, Canada, whatever, where they basically overbook centrally by 8 times and want to have a deterministic behavior. Now, going over in engineering mode a little bit, that is extremely dangerous. The question mark is, what should we do about this, and where should we drive this?
So let me challenge you a little bit. To increase the utilization, isn't that really why these kind of large-scale sort of compute platforms like Google is running, for example, is quite optimal? Because that way you can ensure that you actually can move your containers or whatever you do the calculations in, and you can have enough CPU cycles so you get the resources you need. Because what I mean is that by scaling up, you can even out the resources.
Again, challenging you. If we want to have a network function implemented, so we have a full software-based solution, nothing with the external switches, nothing with the external routers, we take that away and go for software and a real cloud implementation, right? I can take AVS as an example. Doing a network function on AVS is totally hilariously expensive. They have a cost that a machine where you need to have 25 gig comes only with 72 virtual cores. And that means, for those not knowing this, that means 72 normal CPU cores for 25 gig. Now, the cost for that machine is extremely high. So doing, for example, a 1 terabit solution, which is not very big, seen from a networking point of view, seen from a web service point of view, that's a totally different discussion. But we need to have the right environment in the right place. AWS, Google, Azure maybe can run an application. That's fine and dandy. And they are non-time critical solutions. But as soon as we want to have a deterministic behavior, we want to control anything, collision domains, whatever, then we need to have a full distribution.
So the keyword there is deterministic.
Definitely deterministic, yeah.
Anyone? Hans?
I got another angle. I mean, jurisdictions and control. Centralized means that we have the same policies for whatever the whole world. And the Western world and some Asian countries are pretty damn different. So if we're going to agree on something, it's going to be lukewarm like something else or not going to happen. So centralized is, no, it's dead on arrival, I think.
So how do we then make distributed computing or storage or whatever functions? What do we mean by that? How do we make that scale? Like Vint was talking very clearly that we are already moving towards a more centralized system. How do we? And his claim was that we cannot turn the clock back. Is that just because he was only talking about applications, maybe, and not these network-centric things? Hans says storage is neutral. But even moving the bits to and from the storage, you just look at the pricing, for example. To use central storage in one of these platforms is normally quite cheap to move data there. It's zero to move the data around, but if you're going to move it out from there, that's when you pay quite often. John?
I know that Cloudflare and a few other operators made storage, or, well, the transfer of storage, either in or out, from their network for free. This includes the Backblaze, big backup provider. I don't know how that changes the costs, or who in the end, someone always pays. I just... Yes, which is
it's probably us. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, as an end customer, I'm always worried that okay, it's free up there, but then I have to actually get the data back, and then it's expensive. Yeah.
But what you're saying is that some players do not charge for the data back.
Yes.
Yeah. But of course they then pay for some they charge for something else, or yes. Yeah. So Börje, this is actually, all of these arguments that we talk about is actually arguments in favor of your model, that data is distributed and we don't need to have this centralized data and we have it all distributed instead, right? So maybe we should replace the IP protocol and change every device on the network with something new.
No, but I think from a robustness perspective, we do want to make things more distributed, because it's being too vulnerable to have these centralized solutions.
But to some degree, these large players have unchallenged you a little bit. To some degree, that this is what Netflix and Google sort of builds with their caches. And they are doing these caches together with the ISPs and the access providers, right? Because they are sort of sharing the investment in one way or another. So to some degree that is happening, but in a different way than what you described. Or?
No, exactly. They're doing exactly the same thing, or actually what we're doing is modeled after what they are doing and what BitTorrent and all these services are doing. All the successful overlays we built on the internet. What we've seen is that these things are really successful, and shouldn't this be part of the basic network service? Wouldn't it be better for scaling and for resource efficiency to build that caching and peer-to-peer multicast infrastructure in an application-independent way into the network, rather than have multiple application-specific overlays to do this on top?
I actually think it's right in the essence that of course it would be nice if we can do this, but I think every stakeholder here has so much of their own interest invested into this that I think it makes total sense for them to just do them themselves, because this is relevant for the biggest players, of course. I mean, the big CDNs we have here in Scandinavia and anywhere else. I mean, they have so much traffic that it makes total sense for this to do themselves, and yeah, so much because the whole thing that they do, right, is they want to digest your data and do stuff with it, and having like general purpose caching for this, I think is almost impossible to do, because they do things differently, because they are different, objectives of what they want to do. Because it's not only about getting the information out, it's also about harvesting information, because they did send information.
No,
I mean,
I completely agree with that. And like the reason Google want to encrypt everything is not because they care about your privacy. That's the boilerplate they put on it, because that makes it easy to sell. The reason they want to do it is that they want to make sure that the ISPs can't do any traffic analysis on the way from the user to Google. That's the real reason they're doing it.
oh yeah, of course. I mean, I don't think that is unknown to anyone that it is the actual cause, right? And the same goes with for example, DNS or TLS, right? I mean, that is typically driven by the ones that has made a lot of business around knowing stuff about DNS. And for every other application is the same, essentially. It's HTTPS everywhere. It is good from a privacy point of view, but it is also good for making money if you're a cloud company point of view.
And all what you say about this make perfect sense for this is what makes ISN a hard sell, because the market forces currently are very strong for that. I completely agree with that. The question is that the world we want to live in? Is that the way we want to have it? And I can see why I have a hard time selling this at Ericsson for these reasons, because we care about those customers. But if I can't send it even in this room for people that supposedly care about the future of the internet, then we're in pretty bad shape.
Well, I mean, it is not as easy as that, right? Because the thing is, I need to choose who essentially spies on me, right? I mean, I can never. My country will always spy on me either way, right? So that I can never opt out of. Then I have to decide: do I want my ISP to spy on me, or do I want Google to spy on me, or do I want both to spy on me? And this essentially, I mean, this is an open field, right? I haven't decided yet. I mean, I would like that neither Google or neither my ISP spies on me, but so far I think
who offers most money?
Well, the problem is no one offers me money, right? I mean, yeah, maybe the ISP offers me a bit of money. I can use certain services for free if they're able to spy on them, right? But this, I mean, this is the hard future that we're going to face. That we're going to need to decide this in some way, and it's got to be decided in this type of scenarios as well, where we do technology choices. I mean, if we look at 5G, that's going to be very interesting to see how much level of spyiness will be included in 5G. I mean, a few of the players that wants to standardize this, they want a lot of this stuff happening. And then, of course, Google sees that, oh, someone is trying to compete with us on spying. That's not going to happen. So then they come in and try to, make other standards to make this spying thing really hard. Anything that has to do with a what can you say, opportunistic encryption, stuff like that. I mean, that is, Verizon doesn't like that. Ericsson, Huawei doesn't like that either, because they want to do their own little magic stuff and local offloading caches and eNode Bs and this kind of things, right? I mean, it is good that we can do this stuff, but it also has some sort of cost as well.
Yeah, look at the standardization in ETSI, for example, for enterprise TLS.
Oh yeah,
which is instead of TLS 1.3, because they need something more secure, so which enables middle boxes to look at the data flow, because that will make the environment more secure. So enterprise TLS, that will be, I think, the next big fight, where ETSI and 3GPP and all of that mobile standards want to have a weaker version of TLS. Andre.
Well, I'm not part of the chat.
Yeah, John. Yeah, keep.
Hi.
Hi. Yes.
Okay. Well, the thing, I mean, the truth is, of course, we got here and all the benefits largely because of the market forces, right? So on one hand, we appreciate those market forces. On the other hand, there's some negative effects, right? The concentration is part of this. The economics, right? So. I appreciate sort of, yeah, there might be technology, but I think technology we can tune, maybe steer a little bit where the things are going, but there are limitations. there was, I think, Vincent that, well, look, there are no permanent favorites, right? Like Facebook and Google can disappear. Well, maybe not tomorrow, but in a year time. Well, remember MySpace and all this stuff. One thing is that, for instance, I think Instagram could have a potential to develop another platform, right? But what happens is that those monsters, they buy off those new startups that has the potential. So it's concentration, not only just economy of scale, right? It's also concentration by a matter of market power.
Consolidation.
Consolidation, yes. So I'm more worried about that new potential competitors, they have little chance because they're just bought off by those giants.
Anyone else?
Stop the discussion.
12 minutes to...
Well, like we can wrap it up a little bit by actually going back to the discussions we had just before lunch. So we had 4 groups. So I can ask the moderators from the 4 different groups. So what did you discuss?
Or anyone else.
Or anyone else,
Yeah,
of course,
please.
from the groups. Like, what did you discuss? Did you come to some interesting, maybe not solution, of course, but some interesting comment or something?
Anyone want to say anything?
Anders, for instance, you had your discussion on the robustness.
There was a lot of people staying around the robustness
Exactly,
corner.
yeah. It was a lot of group, yeah, a lot of persons standing in that corner.
I was not from that corner. I was from the fake news corner.
Yeah, okay, come on.
Yeah. When we were discussing fake news, we weren't just taking up the fact that less and less young people or teens or whatever you want to call them are actually watching regular TV and news. And they are getting their sources from online, and not just the good quality news, but everything you get, whether it's the latest blog from someone or actual news. And they don't just watch regular TV. My teenager does never actually check her mail. She just find it cumbersome to check mail, so there was no really. And oh yeah, just like Hugge. But the fact you just go to different services, like in this case Snapchat, I don't know if Hugge is there too. But we're going to different news, different services to actually check what we consider relevant, and that doesn't really. And the thing with linear TV is that they actually took up things that's really not just relevant to us, but to everyone.
Just to some degree, that was what Olof talked about, right?
Yeah.
That's still limiting the number of sources from which people can get information will not really help. We will live with increased amount of information, increased number of sources, anyways, right?
Because I mean, isn't linear TV just a filter bubble for people? More legitimate or relevant news on TV than there is on someone's YouTube channel. I mean, I don't really see the difference. So
Exactly, there might not be any difference.
it's like an inverted filter bubble, or
Yeah. So anyone would like to say something about any other group than fake news? We're on our way to Anders, so let's see what you say about the robustness, if you have anything to say. Yeah, Anders, please.
Okay, my name is Anders Rafting. I worked before in the National Post and Telecom Agency with the robustness issues. And I think Särimner, the project that is financed by the authority now and made out by Sunet and Node, will trigger the important functions critical to society to make efforts to strengthen their connectivity and work with distributed caches, etc., like SARIM actually does. So, but when we had the discussions, there were no objections of SARIM as an idea. One question was who is going to pay the implementation, etc., and who is going to participate? Who is going to force? Should it be requirements for example, communities, municipalities to participate in this, and who is going to pay, as they always have a lack of money that should be used for school and etc. Yes, I think that was the summary of what we discussed.
All hard questions. Yes, the microphone is on. Yeah. All hard questions. But on the other hand, we have certain other things, robustness in regarding roads and the water is relatively clean in Sweden and etc. And someone pays for that, right? So one of the things that we are fighting for at NetNode is that we need to, just because all of these things are boring, maybe there are certain things we should actually pay for together instead of having each one of us having to implement that, and to make the total cost for the society for certain functions cheaper. The total cost should be low. It should be lowered. So you're going to talk again. I'm not surprised.
Thanks. Yeah. So I'm going to explain what we talked about in the AI, maybe not a conclusion on it, but it was a discussion on where we're going to use it. We have the application layers. We have, of course, the network layers. There's a lot of layers here and interest from different parties. So the ISPs have one type of interest. I really like when the ISP can look into the traffic because they can do the prioritization and the mobile side. And you're going to be surprised about 5G and how they're going to handle that. But anyway, going over to the AI, the interesting thing is that everyone, and most of the time, are talking about looking at the information. The interesting thing is that that is, from an engineering point of view, totally uninteresting. AI should be used, and information should be used to control something. And that's called a control loop. And everyone who has an exam in engineering knows this. The interesting thing is that when you look at something and get some figures out, you can talk about economics. They want to look at something, does it compare to my budget or their budget? So that's the background also, which is kind of funny, because what we're talking about in AI is that one model doesn't help you. It gives you a wrong answer in some corner cases. What you need to do is a combination, normally, when it comes to AI. You can't rely on one model or one method in itself, inherently bad. When it's coming to also to the result is, where are we going to use this? Are we scared about it? Yes, I am. If I'm going to have an AI controlling a nuclear plant, we are going to have a long discussion about how trustworthy it is. But when it's come to giving you information about business models or giving you marketing information, that's a totally different thing. Go back again over to Google and the rest of the guys. A little bit depending on, going back to Börje and ICN. Netflix has finally, for the first time in history, approved of giving their software and implement it virtually. So you can be very happy now because they are going into a virtual implementation in some vendors and not going to supply any CDN boxes anymore. That's breaking news for this audience at least. But AI, again, coming down to planning was one thing. Planning networks, we have had this discussion about robustness. How are we going to have a fully distributed network which has interconnect on more or less 6,450 places in Sweden, for example? There's a lot of other things around the construction and the solutions on the engineering side beside the pure marketing and application handle. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the virtualization is something that I also see is coming. It's like, okay, when the Apple TV player box or the Chromecast thing have enough storage, of course, the application from Netflix will, of course, download the new series or whatever. There's a very long tail, but sort of the next series or whatever will be downloaded and will be there already when you buy things, right? And download over the night or something. So, yep.
I just had a question about something different. Perhaps for you, for 5G. Have they fixed the routing issues from 4G when you are actually abroad? And for example, in my case in France, and I roam, and I want to visit a French news site. For some reason, my traffic goes all the way back to Sweden and then down to France again. Has that been fixed with 5G?
Okay, so so up on stage, Javelin.
So I'm with Telecarrier, and we have the IPX network 8837 that a lot of providers use to send their roaming traffic back and forth from the source country back to the home country. And essentially, I'm not at all an expert in this area, but there is development with software-defined networking in hijacking traffic in the mid-path and then looking at it, okay, is this something which is an access list from the provider should go to the home country, or can it be egressing somewhere along the path instead? That's essentially the same thing, but they will have total control of it instead.
Okay, Christian, you move a little bit closer. Like, no. There are people online as well, so you need to use the microphone. Yeah.
When it's come to this, the APN is a name, and it's DNS-based, and the only thing they have to do is when you go for Telia.com, the APN name, they change it out or change it over to internet and locally terminate it in an APN. They don't need shit in the network. Frankly, done it and done it one more time.
Yeah, but you're missing kind of one vital point here, is that you want to take out roaming charges without actually roam the client. Yeah, so I mean, it is. Well, yeah, they're going away for the customer, but not going away internally inside the ISPs, right? So the ISPs still juggle around this type of money and have meetings with each other, right? So
Javelin.
When it comes to the money, this is kind of funny, because when we look into this, the roaming fees are hilarious compared to the cost which they are definitely generating, seen from a technology point of view and equipment. The interesting thing is that you can do exactly the same thing within Sweden. So all 4 operators can act exactly the same, which means you can even have it in emergency cases. So this is bogus. Read 501, 502, 503 in 2023.
Okay. Börje. Okay. So we only have one answer to this, right?
No, it's not. It's not going to be a nice answer, because that should solve the problem. And this is not a bug; it's a feature. Especially now, since the roaming charges gone away. That's why when I'm traveling, can watch Swedish television, even though it's country restricted. So it's really good that it tunnels all the way back home.
Okay.
And there's never been a problem with the standards since that version, maybe, but the problem is that no operator wants to use that option, and this solution will instead give the users what they want, but also the operators what they want, hopefully.
Okay.
Hopefully, I think we should end there.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. I just when listening to this new feature of Netflix, isn't it a little bit like TiVo? I mean, just I just got the idea that it was. Like,
the background is that Netflix has refused for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, something like that, basically since they started. They wanted to have their own hardware because they want to have full control, and understandable. Seen from my point of view, totally understandable. What they have agreed now is that we can use virtualization as a way of handling the traffic. So the only thing they are looking for is multi-format savings, or should I say storage, so they can store the tail, which is 80% then of the content that people are looking at, and then going over to a software defined. But they have hard demands on the vCPU, should I say, the virtualized environment. But that's a totally different discussion. So they have accepted it.
Cool. Thank you very much. And I think we should wrap it up, don't you think, Patrik?
No. We should
No, no, no,
continue
no.
the discussion, but outside of this room.
Yeah, but
Yes.
we unfortunately for the viewers, the online viewers, we are going to move to another room, so we have to wrap it up in that sense, actually.
Yes.
So what I would like to say to both you in the room and both you also online, that we are super happy to have you here, both online and here in the room, and both me and Patrick actually would really like to have feedback for what you think about this conference, the item, the topics and the questions or whatever, because of course we want to do it again, don't you say?
If you don't say no, we will probably
if you
try
don't
to
say
arrange it
no,
again.
But we will appreciate actually ideas for the next conference we have in a year or so. So please come back with the questions. It might be the case we actually send out for all of you. We have your email addresses, so maybe we do that.
Yeah. So with that, thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah,
and,
thank you very much.
You guys online, you have to take care of yourself.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
others, see you outside.
See you.
Thank you.